All right, welcome back to Alabama Gristmill. This is Mike Causey with my co-host Donna Causey. How you doing today?
Hello, I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
Doing good. Kind of our normal intro here. But good to be back here. We've got another interesting story pertaining to the state of Alabama. It's regarding Andrew Jackson and his wife and how they're connected to Alabama, or one of the early ways they're connected to Alabama.
Well, particularly his wife. This is mainly about his wife, because a lot of people don't realize there is a connection there.
And like always, I appreciate everybody out there, listeners, viewers, fans. There are all the different ways that we can connect with us. Through Facebook, through our website, etc.
Our books too. You know, the Alabama Footprint series and all that. We appreciate all those that buy those and continue on. I still have plans to get the next 4 into one book. We managed to get the first one. We just haven't got the second one yet, but we will.
So those books are a good little last minute Christmas gift with the Christmas coming up. You can order those and they get delivered from Amazon very quickly. If you've got a history buff that in the family that's getting into history or even genealogy, be a good little gift.
To find the books online at Amazon, you just type in Donna R. Causey and you'll get the list of all the books. So you can see where they are and find one that you like. We also are doing a lot of things on the site for a genealogist for the patron. It's a good way to look at newspaper articles that have personal information. We're doing that a lot for the patrons online. Oh, I wanted to mention something too. If you get a chance, be sure and watch the episode on Who Do You Think You Are?
Is that coming up?
Yeah, a picture from our website is on one of the episodes, the Regina King episodes.
They contacted us, did some research using the site and everything, and they're going to use some of our material on their story about Regina King and her connection with Alabama. The
patron site, we're really trying to get some response from the members too. If you've got some pictures, share them there. I mean, your work may be part of history as well, because people are finding the site here from different areas and looking for the stories, and we're looking for stories that are not known about the average person, not the things in the history book so much, but the things that are not known, so we can add to our history. And I particularly look for things by women. You know, it's just so sad. Women have been left out of the history book so many times, and I ran across an article the other day. We wouldn't know much about the universe without a woman that had discovered so many things. So it's so sad that they weren't mentioned. And so if you can find it, a lot of that information is in families. So if you have something to share, please share it and let us know about it. It's very easy to do. You can share it in the community on the patron site. It's real easy.
The episode of Who Do You Think You Are? It's a genealogy show. It's on TLC, and it's going to be on Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central. So you can check that episode out.
Yeah,
and it's a fun little show to watch. You know, to see where you trace your family history back.
Yeah, and they repeat those episodes too. It's the one on Regina King that you want to look for. To be some Alabama history in there.
There's some good Alabama history there. Well, let's go ahead and get into the story here about Andrew Jackson's wife, Rachel.
Rachel, a lot of people have heard some stories about her. There was kind of a scandal about her and Andrew Jackson that came across it, and we think of her in connection with Tennessee a lot, but there is an Alabama connection. Rachel Donaldson was her maiden name, and she was the daughter of Colonel John Donaldson. And she was very adventurous, evidently, because she was involved in a lot of things that her father was. Rachel Donaldson, as we said, was the wife of Andrew Jackson. And she was one of the first people to try to settle, along with her father, the northern Cumberland settlements that extended to the Tennessee River. In the 1790s, Alabama was sparsely settled. The center part really was composed of the homes and the residences of the Native Americans. And the north and the south were the only areas that were settled. Fort Charlotte at Mobile was still part of Spain, and South Florida belonged to Spain. It was not really part of the Alabama Territory for a while. Mississippi Territory was still an immense wilderness during the early 1770s to 90s. Most people didn't travel through it very much. As early as 1777, some expeditionary trips were made by settlers on their way to Madison County, but they were attacked by Native Americans several times and were held back. They never went past the Tennessee River. They settled in the outskirts of Tennessee rather than Alabama. The Donaldson family were among the first white settlers in Tennessee. Colonel John Donaldson, Rachel's father, led a band of 160 persons to the area of Madison County. And Rachel happened to be part of the group. She was only 12 years old at the time. And it was said that she was a black-eyed, black-haired brunette, and gay and bold and handsome molasses as ever danced on the deck of a flatboat. That was her description in history by many people. And she took the helm while her father took a shot at the Native Americans who were attacking him. That was very typical. The women took the helm of the boat and the men shot back at the Native Americans as they tried to go into the territory in the area. The party managed to traverse Muscle Shoals when they hadn't done that before, which had always been too difficult for previous settlers, and they were the first Europeans to set their eyes on the soil of Lawrence County, Alabama. After a trip of 2 months, they finally returned home to their family and friends. She was not one to stay home with the women folk like a lot of people did. She was out along with her father. She was a very brave woman. She was one of 11 children. Her family had moved from Virginia to the western Cumberland or Tennessee when she was a child, so she had grown up in the wilds of Tennessee. Her family was one of the first settlers of Nashville, and at the age of 18, Rachel married Louis Robards, who was a prominent man in the area, and the couple went to Kentucky to live with Louis's widowed mother. Evidently, her husband had died, and Louis was going to take care of her. But sadly, their marriage was not a happy one. Evidently, she was a very attractive woman, and Louis was suspicious and jealous of his wife, and he accused her of having affairs of the men boarders that were in his mother's home. There were also reports that he slept around with women in the slave quarters, so they were just not very much in love, it sounded like. Rachel returned to her family in Tennessee because she just couldn't take it anymore, being a spirited woman like she was. And she took a trip to Natchez, Florida even, which was still under Spanish control, to kind of get away from him because he came after her, of course. And on one of the trips in 1789, she met Andrew Jackson, who was down there with the military. Story is a little muddled about what actually happened. Rachel's family say she was a victim of domestic abuse, and she fled there to avoid Robards in Tennessee, and Jackson just kind of rescued her. But Robards says that Jackson met her, and he just stole her away and seduced her. And she loved Andrew Jackson, and he loved her. They lived in adultery for a while in order to provoke a divorce from Robards. It's kind of a scandalous situation back then. Divorce was almost unheard of at the time. And women that were abused were expected to tolerate it, and they just had to make do because they were property, and they could do anything you want to with them. It was a very different image compared to what it is today. So you have to kind of put yourself back in those times. So but they finally did divorce. To tell you how rare it was only one of 42 bills of divorce allowed in December in 1790. And the trial for the divorce didn't actually take place till August 1793. And that's where the scandal kind of comes in, because she was not divorced when she married Andrew Jackson. The divorce bill was allowed, but it was not actually finalized. Her marriage with Andrew Jackson was a happy one, and society continued to censor their marriage, though, for the rest of her life. She was a divorced woman, and her character, of course, was attacked because it was always the woman's fault back then. That's why she was trying to get her husband, to go ahead and do the divorce. When Jackson ran for president in 1828, gossip spread like crazy, and of course the scandalous situation was used, and Rachel became very, very depressed over the whole situation. She stated to her niece that she considered herself a hindrance rather than a helpmate to her husband, who was running for president. And 3 months before Andrew Jackson was inaugurated, Rachel died of a heart attack at the age of 61. And Jackson, for the rest of his life, blamed the political opponents for her death. And there's a lot of people who don't like Andrew Jackson and different stories about it, but these stories are really interesting. If you take yourself back in time and realize all they had to go through, it's amazing.
All right, that's a pretty crazy story about a strong woman and a scandalous love for the President Andrew Jackson.
Yeah, a lot of people know that story about Rachel. I've heard, or may have heard little bits about it, but you don't know there was an Alabama connection. I love to find these little Alabama connections in here from time to time and bring out the problems women had back then too, and that one kind of does. Definitely
does. I mean, it was the challenges they faced in society, and divorce was not an option, really.
Yeah, if you're a woman, I mean, you were property, and you were looked at as property back then, and you had to put up with basically everything that your husband did. You owned nothing. You were left without a lot of things, a lot of ways to get out of a domestic abuse situation of any type. But we don't know the true story of it, but it's nice to hear all sides in a story like that so you can understand it better. We can make up our own mind. We'll never know the true stories.
Well, I definitely have to say things have gotten better. That's the good part.
Right. And that's what the whole website and everything that we're doing with this podcast is about, is we hear all the sides and we can make our minds up ourselves about what happened in history. But if you don't hear the whole story from everybody's viewpoint, from different perspectives, you don't have a good basis for understanding the history and
the actions of people, what they did and everything.
Right, because I mean, you don't want just blaming them for this and that and the other is because everybody has their own opinion. That's when you look back in historical texts, everybody's writing for a purpose in some reason, and it may be political or not, but you never know. But you get the whole story from different perspectives. It's nice to see. So that's what we're trying to do with the whole thing here.
Well, we'll go ahead and start wrapping it up here. I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year and all that with the holiday season here. And if you're looking for that last minute present, of course, you got a history buff or somebody that's kind of interested in history, it's a good way to get them introduced to the Alabama history, because there is the Alabama Footprints books. So you can find those on Amazon.com.
Yeah, they're short little books and tell about different stories that you've never heard of. So that's what's fun about them.
Yeah, and all you got to do is just go to either Google or Amazon and just search for Alabama Footprints or Donna R. Causey. Either one will get you those books, and they directly support what we're doing here, so we really appreciate it. And with that, we'll just let Red Foley play us out with a little Alabama Jubilee, and we'll see y'all next time. Thanks for listening.
And happy holidays.
Dancing round on his toes, throws away his crutch and hollers, hey, let her go, oh, honey.